Here we go. So first of all, Nomads, Nesters, and Neighbours. Has anybody kind of like looked at that title and thought, what the hell is she talking about? Or Nomads, Neighbours, and Nesters, depending on who's posting it when.
It's a great title,
So
I
it's,
think.
thank you. So it's the idea that we came up with a little while ago that really reflects a lot of who we are and the kind of people that we are attracting. And so I'm actually going to share with you the little definitions because people are really curious to find out where they fit in, if they're a nomad, a nester, or a neighbor. So let me just pull that up and share that with you. Give me 1 second here.
Morning.
Good morning. Okay, so the nomad is someone who is remote worker, snowbird, entrepreneur, adventurer, thrive on mobility and variety. So I'm definitely a nomad. Is there anybody else who feels like they're a nomad?
Definitely.
Might be a few people. Yeah. So, those of you who know me, I spend some time in Vancouver, some time in Victoria, and then I love to spend my winters in Mexico. And there's a group of us who are looking at spending more time in Europe. So you're going to hear us talk about buying the castle in Italy or the chateau in France and actually creating the village. So it's quite possible now with this remote working thing that we're all on. So we want freedom. Our biggest fear is feeling trapped. Oh my God, don't tie me down, right? Leave me to be free. Opportunities, right? So again, some of the things we came up with are, we want some kind of a rooting. So like I met a woman a little while ago, actually at Mindvalley in Amsterdam. And she said, I'm traveling to new places every day for a year. And I said, that's going to be completely exhausting because you're never going to feel like you have any real connection or any roots. And as she kind of spent time with those of us in Mindvalley for 2 weeks and realized how many friends she made over that 2-week period, she kind of changed her idea a little bit. So we want to feel a little bit of grounding, but that grounding also gives us the freedom to go fly. Opportunity, we don't need to have the usual kind of stable or normal or traditional home, right? We want something that's a little bit more out of the box. And then, we're balancing independence and connection and creating that network. So that's a lot about the nomad. The nester, right? So nesters want the security. I have a couple of friends who they still love to travel. They still love to have that freedom, but they need that strong level of security. They want the regular job. They want the pension. They want the paycheck. And that's where they are at their most comfortable. They love the shared responsibility. So you definitely, if you're a nomad and you're looking at getting into a partnership, you want a nester in your group because they're going to give you some of the stability. And maybe if you're lucky, they might even do some of the accounting. It's so exciting when someone does the accounting. You can tell that's not me. Biggest fear, aging alone, financial pressure, carrying too much solo, right? There's a lot that we're feeling right now. And I've been using this term a lot, is solo in your silo. We work a lot by ourselves. There's a lot of news about people going back to work, right? So there's lots of going back to the office. People are spending a lot more time being single. And so you want to be in a group so that you can, get that community going, because if we're going to be living for so long, we don't want to be living by ourselves. We want to be living in our community, like my mom's group of 50 women that she has a great time with in Mexico. So this could be multi-generational homes, co-ownership models, but just more of that community, but still giving that little bit of the nest opportunity. The neighbor. So the neighbor is your connector and your builder. So they're social, they're collaborative, they love to network, they want the leadership, they love to bring people together. They want to join the community or build the community, and they want to be the value and vision alignment. So they want to bring the alignment with the vision and the values to the group. They love being surrounded by people, but they definitely want to be in alignment. They don't want to be out of alignment. And they are kind of the glue, right? So again, you need that kind of person who is holding things together. And that's where the neighbor comes in. So these are just some fun ideas to think about as we're talking about nomads, nesters, and neighbors. So again, I'm curious, pop in the chat what area you think you are, or if you're a crossover, right, between a nomad and a nester and a neighbor. For me, I'm definitely a nomad first, and a neighbor, and then a nester third. So yeah, I'll be curious to see who falls into which different category. So that's just a little bit of an explanation about why we've come up with this fun title. And this is going to be what we're going to move with as one of our free monthly sessions. And each month we're going to bring you different speakers. Some will have opportunities that fit in one of the categories. Some are going to be talking about the different expertise level. So for example, today we have Noam. He's going to be talking about Coho BC. He's going to be talking about what co-housing looks like and how you can get involved in co-housing. Of course, Elisa is going to talk about co-living. And, there's a difference between co-housing and co-living. And of course, Elisa started Mimos Co-Living in Toronto, and she's just expanded to Columbia. And co-living is also that kind of thing you do. You get your big bestie mansion and live in a big, beautiful house together. Obviously, we're also going to be talking about the regenerative farms, the rural, the land development, because that's really big. I see Stefan is here, and I know he's doing some stuff in Mexico. Ash is here. He's got a property in Victoria that he's going to be telling us about. And so if we have time, we'll invite everybody to, if they've got something they want to share, this is going to be the opportunity to do it. So I'm going to give you a little bit more information at the end about the direction that we're going in, but I want to get our guest speakers up first. And so, Noam, I think you're first on deck. So you and I met probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And I just love what you're doing with Coho BC. And it's just so important to keep sharing these ideas, because traditional housing is kind of not really fitting in a lot of people's boxes right now. It's too expensive. There's a loneliness crisis. And so co-housing is one of the solutions. And so, Noam, I'm so glad you're here. It's nice to connect with you again. And I see you've got your shares ready. So awesome. So, let's hear from you about what's new in co-ownership and Coho BC.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me in here today. I hope everyone can hear me okay. So, well, my name is Noam Dolgan. I'm based in Vancouver, but I work with an alliance of people around the province, realtors such as myself, but also lawyers, group facilitators, folks like Liza and many others, to help people navigate the opportunities and the complexities of real estate co-ownership. And we talk a little bit about the difference between co-ownership and co-housing, which, and I can talk a little about both. Co-housing, well, can happen through co-ownership, can happen through strata ownership, kind of is more about, a value and a vision and a community structure. And co-ownership is a legal structure to allow us to take advantage of some of these opportunities. Real estate co-ownership takes many forms, and it's nothing new. Before 1966, there was no Strata Act in BC. And so if you wanted to own shares in a larger property or a larger building, you had to co-own the property. We saw a movement in ownership co-ops in the 60s and 70s, where people would build together or they would convert a building. So we see rural co-ops and we see urban co-ops, equity-based co-ops from that time. For the last many years, as we've been seeing a real push in co-housing, most co-housing projects these days are strata-owned in their final product, but certainly go through a co-ownership, co-development phase along the way. And we've always seen families, co-investors, fractional and vacation properties. We've seen forms of co-ownership across the board. In fact, that the Strata Act was what made co-ownership even more popular, because of course all strata properties, condos, duplexes, townhomes, those are all co-owned to some degree, right? You have your own title, but you have to share vision of the property. So since you're already co-owning in many other forms with a bunch of strangers, why not co-own with people you know, people you trust, people you have shared values with, and take advantage of some of the financial and social and personal opportunities that come with that? So we're seeing co-ownership. So that's why people are now getting into co-ownership, right? To build community and mutual support systems, to know their neighbors, just have better housing. And we like to say better housing for less, because if you do it right, the price per square foot or the effective price for the kind of housing you're getting can be lower, or at least you can get more for your money, more space, more yard, more resources, more access to to other amenities you couldn't otherwise get, or the ability to live in otherwise unavailable locations like acreage or single family neighborhoods. You're not tied to the traditional condo parts of our communities. So there are a lot of reasons people come to co-ownership. I like to see it as like a hack. So you can find the property that works for you, find the partner that works for you, and build yourself better, more affordable, more sustainable housing. And I really like Liza's framing of the Nomads, Neighbours, and Nesters concept, because people often ask me, like, who does co-ownership work for? And the truth is, it works for a lot of people at different phases and different reasons in their life, right? So we see it a lot with intergenerational families, so people trying to live, with their parents and grandkids, and that encompasses generally all of these types of people, right, at different stages in their life. We see young people who want community coming together, and we see older retirees who want community coming together, younger folks who are trying to build equity in the market, and older folks maybe who are trying to save money in their retirement, on all sorts of different motivations, but can really bring you to this model to say this can make a lot of sense. And certainly for the nomad to be able to have, we see people actually do this with holding on to small properties that they can come back to, rent out when they're away, things of that nature. So we at any stage in your life, there's a reason why co-ownership can really work for you. And all you need to do is be able to think collaboratively and a little bit outside the box. And because what it can look like is really quite dependent. It can be communal living, right? I mean, we have the co-living models that we've heard about. I mean, Luke is here. There can be people living together, sharing a townhouse or a condo. Though the majority of folks that we work with are looking at co-ownership with private dwellings and suites. So houses or properties with multiple dwellings on them, or homes divided into multiple suites. So it's effectively like having your own apartment or a townhouse or a little house. You're not sharing living rooms and bathrooms, etc. But again, you are sharing as much as you want to share as you choose to build your community, which is really, again, how this is up to you to form and then we can help you kind of structure we'll get more into that later. So, do you have your private suite, or are you living collectively? What are you going to have in terms of common space, yards and sheds and garage and laundry, common resources, tools and cars and gardening equipment, a hot tub? Are you going to do common community celebrations, organized meals on a regular basis, holiday events, skill exchange, whatever you might want to do? And what kind of mutual supports do you want to build in together? So this is where this is a much like co-housing on a larger scale, where you're building a community of 10 or 20 to 40 families around some of these collective values. You can do this on a smaller scale at any size. 2 or 3 people can come together and ask all of these same basic questions. So for all these reasons, we're seeing this becoming increasingly popular. As I said, it's not a new concept, but it's one that has really taken off in the last few years, with a lot of the surveys these days saying that actually 50% of Canadian non-owners are open to co-ownership as a pathway into the market and into better housing. And those numbers, while they're higher in the younger generations, I think because of people feeling that's their only path, they're as high as 34% in a lot of the recent studies for people 55 plus. So really across the board makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. So to give some classic examples, and of course everyone here has different housing needs, different areas they're looking at in cities, which are going to have different housing types and different price points. But to give some quick examples of the types of housing we see people co-owning, I'll run through some common examples and use some East Vancouver-based numbers generally, because that's where I am. So, if you were a young family looking at a half duplex or a townhouse, generally in Vancouver now, you're looking at a 1.5 million entry point, whereas you can co-own a property with 2 living spaces in the house, basically the same thing, right? A half duplex or a townhouse where they're attached to each other, multiple parts in a building. You can co-own something at around $2 million or at $1 million a piece, and you have the opportunity of having less fences, so you can actually both have access to the shared yards instead of how most duplexes are set up, where I get 1 yard and you get the other yard. And again, you can build in those other support systems. So we see these duplex various forms. One common version in the bottom left picture here is the Vancouver Special. So it's a bottom floor. the Vancouver special, the Burnaby special, the BC special, depending on where you find it in this. And then on the right here, we have an example of a side-by-side duplex. So two houses basically built attached to each other. But they can't be sold separately. They have to be co-owned on title together. But that provides a real opportunity for folks. We also see multiple dwellings on a property. So here's an example of a laneway house on the back of a home in an urban setting. We certainly have auxiliary dwellings on rural properties as well. On 5 acres, you can have 2 houses, sometimes with a cabin as well. So again, in this situation here, instead of buying in an older detached home starting at 1.8 million, somebody could buy in with be the main part of the house at around 1.4 million, 1.5 million, and their partner could be in the back with a laneway house at around 700,000. And what they're getting is a really unique standalone product, small private house, but with full shared access to acreage or the yard. So it's an example from, say, Vancouver Island, where you have 2 houses on a rural property, paying 1.2 plus to get into an acreage property. You could split that, get one with 2 houses on it for around 1.4, and be in at 900 or 500 a piece. And of course, again, these numbers will vary. If you're in the interior, they'll go down. If you get more people on a property, you find properties with more units, you can break that down further. Collective living, of course, is the most affordable option because you don't all need your own bathrooms and your own kitchens and your own space. So if you're looking at a traditional condo, which again in Vancouver is around 900 a square foot, you can share a condo, 2 people into a place. You can buy a townhouse, or you can buy a house and share it. And while the price per square foot change, you personally are getting a lot more space. So your entry point goes from 550 down to 400 or so, or for that 550, you could have a really nice house with big garages and a hot tub in the backyard, and and a home office space and all sorts of things you couldn't get through individual living. We're also seeing a lot of this happening now in tiny home communities, particularly in places like Vancouver Island and the Kootenays and the Okanagan, where folks are trying to especially in places like the Kootenays which don't have zoning, where you can really do a lot of this. The challenge with much of this is zoning and permissibility, though a lot of folks are also happy to do this off the grid and just have plans for what would happen if somebody were to question their structure. But I mean, you can buy into pieces of land, tiny home communities between $50,000 and $200,000 for a pad and a share in ownership, and then put your tiny home on it. So for between $100,000 and $300,000, you can get access to beautiful acreage and beautiful regenerative communities and supportive natures, etc. So there are a lot of advantages to this, a lot of things that bring people into it, and I won't go much longer here. I think I'm probably running out of my time, but there's higher quality of housing, more affordable, more community, all those sort of pieces. Now, of course, there are challenges. If there weren't challenges, everyone would be doing it all the time. And so you have to figure out financing. You have to figure out a plan for delinquency if someone stops paying, an exit strategy when somebody wants out. How are you going to allocate, costs and repairs and responsibility? And this is where a group like Coho BC comes into play, where we can support you to have these right conversations and to create the right strategy socially, financially, and legally to underpin your relationship, and then also on the real estate side, help you find the right existing housing stock or help you navigate the zoning to a place where you can create the housing that you need. And so that's why we came together to make this happen. So through using these professionals, you can make sure you've done a well thought through deliberative process and create a proper partnership agreement. This is the legal underpinning, and I won't go into all these details, but it's a 13 to 20 point plan for everything that we just talked about. And so that's why Coho here has come together as a group of real estate agents, lawyers, builders, financial institutions, architects, mediators, even a matchmaker we can refer you to kind of get with experience and expertise to help you through that whole process. So I know there's a bunch more I could talk about, co-investment models, co-development models, selling a share. We have people these days now who own property already, but want to access equity or want to become a nomad when they've been a nester. And so now they need someone to look after their property and to take a little money out of their property, selling shares to bring in partners and create the community on site that they're looking for. So it's not just about new groups coming together. We can help you if you already own property. And I also, the one project I want to let people know about that we're working on at the moment is a really interesting kind of apartment building takeover. There's an apartment building in Strathcona in East Vancouver that has 7 apartment units, a commercial unit, and 4 half duplexes. And it's currently co-owned. It's the two co-owners, 2 of the half duplexes, and they're looking to sell it. And so we're trying to put who would try to purchase this property. 4 of the half duplexes would come vacant, so they'd be easy to into. And then a bunch of the actual tenants in the building have expressed interest of joining the collective as well. So it's a chance for the tenants to take over their own building, build a little more intentional community into the building, like take control of their own future, in their homes, team up with some real local community folks. And to make this happen, we're also going to need some investors, because not all the units are going to end up being vacant for owner-occupiers. So it's an opportunity for people to come together, tenants in the building, local, new owner-occupiers for some of the units, plus investors who want to see this kind of community-minded housing and a preservation of people's long-term housing together to take on this property. So that's a project we're working on right now. Some folks might have heard about the Horseshoe Bay Cottages, a project where we did a similar thing with 8 rental cottages on 2 lots in Horseshoe Bay. So, the versions of this kind of stuff, a lot of stuff with 2 or 3 or 4 people coming together to make micro communities, and then these larger, building acquisition projects, rural regenerative community, tiny house projects, and also working with folks to help build those co-housing communities that I could talk more about later if there's more time. But where basically you come together to build a lot of those same values of supporting community into a development project that then ends up being strata. And so co-ownership becomes a phase, and then in the end you have strata properties, but better housing, right? Better intentional communities for everybody. Liza, I hope that's what you're looking for. I hope I stay close enough to my time frame, and I'm happy to take questions.
That was great. Just really, really, really awesome. I know there's a lot of questions in the chat. A couple things, I always like to kind of just go back and reframe some of the things talked about. I'm just going to drop the screen for a minute so we can all see each other. So as someone who has been doing this for a while and owns property with partners and community and co-investors and friends, the number one thing that I think, we're definitely teaching when we're teaching people how to do it is get your partnerships correct first. The property it almost doesn't, not that it doesn't matter, but when you have the right people, the property will reveal itself, because we look around. You're in this space, you're going to start seeing opportunities everywhere, right? You're going to start seeing the tiny home villages. You're going to start seeing the apartment buildings to buy. You're going to start seeing a fourplex, and you're going to say, oh my gosh, I could get my besties together. Miranda's just mentioned that her sister said, why don't we get together and buy a house in Italy, right? One of the gentlemen that we've got coming on next month got his family together and they bought a castle in Italy. She's American. He's a Viking. He calls himself the Viking, and they have a castle in Italy. They host weddings a year, and it houses 80 people. So, the sky is literally the limit. Alexis is doing regenerative farming and eco villages. So there's all kinds of opportunity, and the key messaging is that this is entirely possible. We can get our friends together. We can create more sustainable housing. We can put a little bit more money in our pocket because all of our money isn't going to housing. And one of the things that I also want to remind people of, because I'm talking to a lot of people these days about, I really feel like I'll never own a home, and I should be myself a condo. And so there's a couple of things that I think we even we have realtors on the call who want to sell you a home. They will also probably be the first to tell you that not everybody needs to own their own 2,500 square foot home or their 1,000-foot condo. And if you're in a great situation, like sometimes it's just great to stay renting and then maybe buy into one of these types of projects as a starting point or as your nomad home, right? I have my nest in Victoria, and then I have my nomad rental that I'm renting in Mexico. But we're going to get a group of women together and buy a hotel in Mexico. Then I might give up in Victoria. So the slogan that I've been saying a lot lately is, whether you rent or you own your home, whether you rent or you buy your home. So whether you rent your home or you buy your home, just make sure you own your life, right? So whatever you're going with direction, put life first and put home ownership and rental. You can put them at the same level and figure out which one works for you and when these things are right in the right direction. Gnome, awesome stuff. I know you and I are going to be doing some work together with the partnerships, and we work with a lot of the same lawyers. We both love Richard Bell and Bell Alliance. And I love the fact that Richard has set up his own co-living for his own family. So you've got a lawyer who set it up in Point Grey. He's living it, he's teaching it, and he's such a lovely man. He's one of the nicest humans I've ever met. And he talks about the fact that he practices happy law. He doesn't do anything not happy law. So yeah, I think that was great. And will you share that slide deck with us just so that we can keep it back burner for next time?
Sure.
Doesn't have to be now, but I know people will be asking for information, so we'll want to be able to point them in the right direction. Did anybody have any questions, any burning questions? I think there were a couple in the chat. So Miranda, I think you had a good one about how do you split the title? Go ahead, Miranda, you can unmute and ask that question. How you doing?
I am good. And yes, I find this topic very fascinating because even if you can afford to buy something on your own, community is so important. Being able to have your people, because not every day is going to be a good day. And so, yeah, to be able to, you're hardly even walking over to your friend's place because it's all in the same building. But I do wonder, because my girlfriends and I have started to talk about this, I do wonder how to split the land title up, because essentially you're setting a strata up. So, how do we split land title up, and how do we split common property expenses up? I guess that's my question.
Good question. And of course, I'll say that was my 20-minute version of an hour-and-a-half presentation. And so if anyone wants to learn more, reach out to me and I can send you a copy of the fuller thing where it'll go into much more detail on all these concepts. The structure of title is going to depend, well, certainly on your jurisdiction. If you're talking about, doing this in Europe and Mexico and things like that, right? My expertise is in British Columbia. And it's going to depend a little bit also on your financing. So generally, most folks will do what's called a tenancy in common. So let's say you own a third, I own a third, and Liza owns a third. It says that on title. Liza has a 33 out of 100 interest in the property, and we're all listed with our share, and all our names are on title. That is the easiest model to protect your interest, and the easiest model.
I would counter that and say that somebody should have a little bit more interest in the property, like a tie voting.
Okay, well that's a different conversation. So I'm not saying it should be a third, a third, a third. I'm saying depending on your percentage of ownership, be it your investment amount or whatever, it will be registered on title in that way. Now, to your point right there, decision making is a whole different conversation. It doesn't have to be tied directly to your ownership stake. Just because I own 55% and you own 45%, I can't then do whatever I want. Most of these cooperative models will be either unanimous consent or every partner gets an equal vote. So the three of us each have a vote. But that's also why you need the lawyers, or at least someone, mediator, to help you figure out these questions. So you have a plan going in early in the process.
Yeah.
In terms of your initial question about owning title, a lot of people will also do it as a corporation, and then you own shares in the corporation. There are advantages to that too around buying and selling of those shares. There are disadvantages around the ability to get a mortgage. So it's really going to depend on the particulars of your situation. And what you'd be careful of, though, is that sometimes if a lawyer is not paying attention, they'll register you as joint tenants,
Okay.
which is as if you were a married couple and one of you then inherits from the other. If you each have your own children, your own estates, your own, you don't want to be a joint tenant. So that doesn't happen much anymore because lawyers know more about it. But I've definitely had a lot of old owners who were registered as joint tenants when they should never have been. They were friends buying together, for example.
Yeah. And I'm just going to jump in just because with time. So I want to make a really important point here. And Miranda asked an excellent question and Noam gave an excellent answer. And I think there's a couple of key points that we want to remember here. Every single situation is going to be unique. So the talking through this is to give you some ideas about what's possible and get you thinking about, oh my gosh, I have so many questions. And you should have a million questions, because if you're doing this right, you want to make sure you get everything done up front, right? I'm talking from someone who has made some of the mistakes. Noam has helped mediate in a couple of my situations, right? So it's really, really important to do the hard work up front. You're getting married, you're starting a business with someone, right? So you're basically doing two things. You're getting married to someone and you're starting a business. So I'm going to swear, I'm sorry, fucking do it right the first time, okay? Just do it right the first time, and then things will get easier. So all of the questions that you have, they're the perfect questions to be asking, because when you're buying the property, there are a million ways to do it. I mean, every single property that I own is completely different. Some are joint ventures, some are corporations. I've got shares in some. I have some under my personal name. I have some under a business name. Depending what province you're in, depending what municipality you're under, right? Whether you can have a short-term rental or not, whether you can live in it as an owner, or, if you own an apartment building in BC, you can actually buy a group of friends and all move in BC, which seems insane, but that's actually the way it is in this province. So there's a lot of things that, this is meant to stimulate those questions so that we're bringing in the people who have the answers. And it's always going to be a negotiation with your group, with your property, and with your team. So your realtor, your bank, your financiers, your private lender, your lawyer, your tax strategist, and all of those things. So I'm making it a big deal because it is a big deal. And do the hard work up front, and then things will become easier. And it's just, again, when you think of how much money we put into our housing and how much time people are complaining about being mortgage poor, doing this up front can help you buy some of that freedom for your future. Right? So that's one of the reasons why this is so appealing to people. And it may sound a little bit scary up front, but again, do it, if you're interested, do it sooner rather than later, because you're just going to get yourself more freedom, and you're going to be building that equity, and you're going to be building your community for retirement. So those are my little additions to the question and the answer. So I'm going to jump over to Elisa so we can keep going. So Elisa and I actually met at a business training that we did back in 2006? Yeah, so we've known each other for quite a long time, and we met people that we're still in touch with from that business course. I think there were about 15 or 20 of us in the course. We're pretty much still in touch with about half of the group, which is really cool. I have a couple of best friends who came out of that group, and in fact, on Saturday, I'm going over to do a big video shoot with one of the husbands of the people from that course, so that'll be fun. And Elisa has been in marketing, and she is really, really passionate about multi-generational, multicultural, and just bringing people together. And she's done an incredible job with building Mimo's Co-Living. And one of the things that I want to remind people about how Elisa has done things, she hasn't let the ownership piece stop her. She's leasing. So she's been leasing properties to bring this into bear, which again, people are like, oh, how do you bring a group of people together to live together? I mean, again, I've done it. She's doing it right now. So Lisa, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Mimo's Co-Living, what we're moving into? And I know you just started in Colombia, and take it away. Go ahead.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much, Liza. It's so nice to be here. And I know that some of my counterparts, my community from the GTA short-term rental, midterm rental, and long-term rental WhatsApp group that we have almost 300 members are also here. So I'm really glad that you guys are here as well. And Noam, thank you for that presentation. I'm actually going to be in Vancouver starting tomorrow. So hopefully I can go and see some more of your beautiful properties. I did see some of Noam's properties before, and they would be amazing for co-living. So I would love to open up one in Vancouver, which is my hometown. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elisa. And as Liza mentioned, I'm originally from Vancouver and moved to Toronto in 2015. I have some relatives here in Toronto, but I knew that they have, small children and things like that. So everyone was super busy. So when I moved to Toronto after my second failed marriage and my daughter getting into McGill and becoming an empty nester, I realized I didn't need to stay in Vancouver anymore. And being a marketer by trade, specializing in diversity and inclusion strategies, I thought Toronto might be a good place for me to land for a while. So here I am 10 years later. When I moved out here, though, I wanted to figure out how can I come to a new city and not get lonely, right? I wanted to create that instant support structure. And so I purposely chose a shared housing for my first place in North York, if anyone knows Toronto. And so from there, I had the very first experience of living in community. And I didn't realize that was what shared housing was like, where people go to the kitchen, they cook something quickly, and then they scurry to their bedrooms and eat in front of Netflix or whatever they do. And I'm by myself yet again. So I didn't meet anyone until one day after maybe 3-4 months, I said, hey guys, why don't we have dinner together? Maybe we could play a board game together. Maybe we can, do a barbecue in the backyard. And I actually created it into co-living before I knew what the word was. So now fast forward, I've been running a combination short-term rentals and midterm rentals since 2019. I moved from North York to closer to Leslieville. And then since the pandemic, we actually created it into a business and we called it Mimos Co-Living. Mimos as the brand is actually a Spanish word that means mother's pampering. So we wanted to create homes that were like walking into your grandmother's home, right? So we've been repurposing single family homes, as well as our first prototype was a rooming licensed house in Toronto at the corner of Spadina and Bloor. Again, very amazing intersection. But since 2024, we've been focused on midterm rentals in both Toronto and in Bogota, in Colombia. Because as been in business for the past 5 years, the regulations have changed, as we all know, in short-term rentals, whether you're in Barcelona, Vancouver, Toronto, it doesn't matter. Everybody is buckling down on the short-term rentals. So with the stricter regulations and licenses, hefty fines, the short-term rental game is not what it used to be. So because we were playing in both midterm rentals and short-term rentals, we knew how to transition into midterm rentals. So with the midterm rentals, what we found is that our profitability is about 10 to 30% more than somebody renting it on a long-term basis. And I love the title of our little talk today with Nomads, Nesters, and Neighbours, because that is exactly who we cater to. So we do have our nesters come into our space. We do have our nomads who, because they are here very temporarily and they need that flexibility, there is a premium charged on the on the nomads. The nesters, they also pay maybe a little bit more or the same as what they might be paying on their own in a private studio, I'll say, or bachelor. But because they get the whole run of the house of all the common spaces, they have a much larger footprint that they can enjoy. Liza, do you want to show some of those pictures? I sent Liza some of the pictures of our space that we just took over in September 1st. This is again in another heritage house in the annex, and it was operated, or it was leased out before to, I think in the basement there was a practitioner, and then the rest of the house was leased out individually to, I think, 2 different families. So it just depends on who you want to target as well. So there's different mixes. Like I mentioned, what we like to specialize, because we are trying to create kind of a homey feel, is that we do want the nesters. And then we also want the people who are digital nomads. Then what we also add into the mix are our neighbors. So if Liza can get the pictures, in addition to creating this beautiful, beautiful space we have with full of antiques, vintage pieces, and different amenities like an art atelier, a games room, a workout space, a beautiful communal backyard. We also include our neighbors and community, the larger community, to come to our events and with our community, with our house community. So us being a very traditional family model, but we're not related, right? We really want to be a good neighbor, and we will actually bring cookies to our neighbors. We will actually, talk to them about, hey, you might not need a cup of sugar today, but maybe I can give you some fresh herbs from our communal garden, right? That kind of thing. So this strategy that of converting your short-term rental property into a midterm rental property isn't just a pivot. It's actually a massive opportunity for those who are either calling your property as your principal residence, or for those who just have investment properties, right? To the guests, and we still call them guests, is that it could be a lot lower entry point for them, because, they don't have to buy the oil. The oil is provided for them, the spices, right? The coffee, the tea. We even provide breakfast, right? And you are selling on a per room basis, the occupancy is higher than having gaps in between for a long-term rental, or even short-term rental for that matter. So you do have a lower guest turnover compared to a short-term rental. So your cleaning costs and all that other costs is a little bit less because our model is co-living, as what our brand name suggests. Co-living, actually, you know what, before I describe our place, I want to hear in the chat what you guys think is co-living. What do you envision? What do you believe co-living to be? Sharing a kitchen? Sure. Yes, so we are sharing common amenities, living amongst others, and sharing spaces. Yes, you will have somebody else in the other room who you're not related to, and you're going to be sharing the different spaces. What else might co-living suggest to you? Making connections with people you share the space with. Yes, that has been an amazing benefit that I've personally gained. I would not have imagined in my wildest dreams to be able to be eating dinner with somebody, with a refugee from Uganda who was in a refugee camp for 25 years. Support between your friends if you need help. Oh my goodness. When we started our Mimos co-living, it was during the pandemic. And we did it then because we saw lots of people didn't have the support structure. And, we actually accepted quarantine guests, and they would check in, go right to their rooms with their masks on, and they had their private washroom. So there was no need for them to come out. So everyone else in the house supported that guest who was quarantining. And we would play games with them. We would chat with them. Hey, do you want your bagel toasted? No problem. We'll leave it up in front of your door. You want another cup of tea? No worries. right? Playing card games with people who speak 6 languages. Absolutely. We've accepted guests from South America, Spanish speaking, Brazil, Portuguese speaking, all over Europe, from Kurdistan, from Africa, as I mentioned, Asia, doing cool shit in a cool vibe with cool humans. Oh my God, that is the best. So yes, all of that is absolutely true. So all of that stuff, though, doesn't necessarily come with just a shared house, as I experienced when I first moved to Toronto, right? So that is the difference that I wanted to create in co-living. And you will see many spectrums of co-living around the world. Some that is just basically a shared house. So please don't get fooled if you book yourself into a co-living. You need to ask the questions, right? So what you want to create, and I just shared my website, what you want to create, you need to be very intentional. And I think that is the biggest thing about a co-living property is versus just a shared house that you're renting out the rooms, right? That it's a very intentional community, right? And so now your tenants then will be, or they're not just vacationing, right? They are going to be professionals looking for a home, not a hotel, right? They want a more home environment. There could be traveling nurses, there could be contract workers, people who are starting a new job in a new city, but they're in a 3-month probation, so they don't want to commit to a 1-year lease just in case it doesn't work out. Corporate relocations and mature students, right? But all in all, what I've found is that people are wanting to meet other locals. They want to meet, the other cool people living in the co-living place, but they also want to meet locals. So you really need to use a platforms that will attract this kind of demographic. Right. Of course. So in terms of the how-tos, you really, there's a few steps, right? So of course, first of all, you need to check on the legal implications of your zoning bylaws in your market. I know, for example, in Burlington here, you need like 1 parking spot per STR room that you're going to rent out. And then if you're doing this in a condo, like if you have a 3-bedroom condo, for example, check your strata rules. For the STR rules, as long as you're renting out 30 days minimum, then the STR regulations and those annual fees that we're paying doesn't apply. Make sure, I think this is the number one thing though, in terms of legalities, is make sure that you have a different agreement for your guests, right? Because just to make sure, because they are staying longer than 30 days, make sure that they are not falling under the Landlord-Tenant Act, right? Because you don't want to run into that. Otherwise, you might as well be doing long-term rentals, right? So we do have a special agreement that all guests have to sign, and it includes the house rules and the expectations, the community aspect, and things like that. Yeah, in BC, it's 90 days now. Exactly. And I'm sorry, you guys. But that works perfectly for co-living, right? So you can turn that from a disadvantage to an advantage, right? So the step 2 then would be the marketing, right? Relisting yourself and positioning your property as a co-living property. And again, you have to decide if it's just going to be shared housing where you're just renting by the rooms, or if you're actually going to create it into co-living. And so as we mentioned in the comments, that co-living, really the difference between co-living and shared housing is the sense of intentional community. And then when you are doing your marketing, you really need to make sure you're directing your service to both the nomads who might be looking for high-speed, Wi-Fi, maybe a co-working space, right? Maybe a quiet room to make their calls. They might be concerned about working at different time zones than the rest of the house, so you need some quiet space to make their calls, etc. For the nesters, they might want to know that, okay, how are you going to be screening these people who are coming in, right? Like, this is going to be maybe not my forever home, but maybe my home for the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever, right? They might want to, do their normal or get back into their normal hobbies, right? And maybe they would appreciate a sewing room. Maybe they would appreciate a garden where they're growing some vegetables and things like that, right? So this is their home, right? And then for neighbors, we have a good neighbor policy in place where we want to make sure that we have quiet times, right? That everything, our garbage, everything, it works like a normal family home, that we invite them, we include them, we tell them in advance, if we're going to be doing something that might, create a little bit more traffic and things like that, right? And then the third step would be to look at your property setup. Make sure your space is prepped for shared living, right? So, I know in a traditional home, maybe your individual bedrooms don't have locks on the doors. Have taken over some houses or looked at some houses to consider, and they are, run as a traditional home, and they didn't have locks on their bedrooms. And then, as I mentioned, unlike short-term rentals, the guests will actually be cooking, right? They didn't want a hotel or a different short-term rental for a reason. They actually want to be living somewhere. So they will be doing cooking. They need to have a little bit extra space to store their groceries. So you need like a bit of a pantry system for them, and keep their food separate from other people. Like, how are you going to work that out? And also they're not just here for the weekend. So yes, they're going to be doing laundry and other amenities that they would enjoy, right? Like maybe doing some, a fitness routine while they're there, right?
And Lisa, I'm just going to jump in because just on the interest of time,
Of course.
I want to get moving on to a couple of the next things. But I think, a really good overview of what co-living is and how it's so much different, right? So I wrote down like a couple of keywords. You use the word create a lot. You're creating a co-living space. It's a hybrid. So, I mean, again, for me, like I've had people who are the neighbors, the nesters, and the nomads in my co-living space. And it makes for such a great mix because, yeah, you end up, oh my God, we played Cards Against Humanity one night with a guy who's barely spoke English, and he was the one who won. 2 Canadians, a Brit, an Australian, and a Mexican. And I mean, we had the most fun because I don't know if anybody's ever played Cards Against Humanity, but first of all, it is not politically correct in any way, shape, or form. And playing with an international group, I mean, we laughed until we cried. So it's those kinds of things. Another couple of key things that I wrote down, short-term rentals. Don't take the chance on not doing it legally. If you are thinking about it, I have been, even on a mistake that wasn't my mistake, I had a bylaw officer show up and write me $18,000 worth of tickets. I fought it. We got it down to $3,500, but it was literally a bylaw officer who just had it in for me. And he showed up my door and wrote me 29 individual tickets for the same offense, instead of picking up the phone on day 2 and saying, hey, Liza, you realize there's an error on your Airbnb rental, which there actually was. And I had no idea. I hadn't made a booking. I hadn't advertised, but of course the city of Victoria loves to show up and write tickets like those. So don't take the risk. It's not worth it. The other thing that I just want to point out that a lot of people have a hard time believing, and Elisa and I have talked about this, and we need more advocates around this, is there are some crazy bylaws. Saanich had a bylaw recently that allowed a family they didn't want to do it, but their neighbors forced them. They evicted a group of 5 students because there was a bylaw that no more than 3 unrelated people could live together in a house. There's a law in Ontario called the Golden Girls Act, and it was 5 women who wanted to get together and buy a property, and the law basically said, well, hey, ladies, if there's 5 of you getting together to buy a house, it must be a brothel, so you can't do it, right? So we have some absolutely archaic rules around how we house, and we're working on the advocacy around that. And so we need people to show up, people to hear the stories, and people to help promote these new ideas, because it's not going anywhere. And we we're way ahead of the boxes that we fit in the government. And so we need to break through those boxes and start telling them what we need to do to actually solve the housing problems and solve the loneliness epidemic that's going on around the world, and get really creative with these properties instead of having them dictate to us, well, if you're 5 women living together, you must be running a brothel. I mean, it's just insane, right?
Liza, can I add something to that little story?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
The government of Ontario recently changed the rule because they realized it was ridiculous. And so if you're 55 plus, you can live collectively. But if you're not 55 plus, then you're still a brothel.
Right.
And
It's
so,
nuts.
I say that because advocacy works, but at the same time, like, we have to push. This is not something just for retirees, right? We see 20-somes have been living collectively for years. We're seeing more and more single people in their 30s and 40s. We're seeing families, right? This is at all generations, and so it is. Even the government changed it for seniors, but we need to change it for all of us.
Exactly. And again, it's where Canada falls way behind, right? Europe, Latin America, all over other parts of the world, Canada is way behind. And so I know Ash has got a comment. And Ash, you're actually up next because you have a property that you want to show us. So I'm going to, if you want to comment, feel free to do that. I just want to introduce you quickly. Ash, how did you even find me? I'm always curious how people kind of, because you just met a couple weeks ago.
We sold an apartment building to a local family in Victoria, and they, through the Bradbury family, and they had the connection. And when I mentioned, hey, we have this other property we're thinking of selling, is there anybody interested, you think? And they suggested we contact you.
Perfect. Suzanne Bradbury. Okay, I know her well.
Exactly.
Yeah, amazing.
Wonderful.
So yeah, love the connections, love that referral. I'll give her a call and say thank you for that.
Yeah.
So you have a property that you want to share.
I do. I just had one comment, from the previous discussion is an interesting thing in BC, which totally caught us off guard. My son has done a rental, same idea, this communal living and curate the space, many of the same concepts, but you cannot get tenant insurance for 3 unrelated tenants. And that's an insurance industry rule. Mm-hmm. And I just with all of these concepts of, the pressure of, I guess, trying to get people into alternate living situations, I'm just floored that the insurance industry would have a block like that. So something else to consider. And we did manage to navigate around it, but it's very not atypical.
Exactly. And just to add to that, the data shows that if you're living in a couple relationship, there's more data that shows you're more likely to have property damage or something that is like a damage as a cause of abuse, your partner, your spousal partner, than you are with a stranger living with you. So the data even shows that your property is safer in most cases with strangers than it is with a married couple. So some of the stuff that they're coming up with as the excuses to not let people live together is bullshit. So on that note, let's hear a little bit about your property, Ash.
Thank you for the opportunity, Liza. Let me jump into, I've got some slides here I can present. Okay, so, it'd be very interesting just listening to the discussion on how many parallels that, in the kind of the co-living concept here that I've applied in being the landlord of this property. So we don't live here. This is a legal sixplex that we own. But I've always felt myself as sort of the mayor of the house. We don't live in it, but, I'm really trying to make it somebody's home, not just the house where they toss their boots against the door and crack a beer sort of thing. So very much along the same lines as previous speakers have brought up. So have owned this house as a family for 18 years. My 2 sons are not interested in being landlords. So I'm early 60s now, and we're sort of thinking of, well, how much longer do we hold on to this? So it seemed like an opportunity to give some thought to passing it along. And then this situation came about, and I can't think of a more perfect fit than this property here. So let me walk you through it. So it is a legally built sixplex that was completely rebuilt in 1982. So the house was originally constructed in the 1900s. typical character mansion of the day in the Rockland area in Victoria, and then was completely rebuilt. So they redid the ground floor new, so new foundation, and created level entry suites there. The upper part of the house was lifted, and there's 2 suites in the back, one bedroom across the front, and a second 2-bedroom across the top. So it's a 5 2-bedroom building and 1-bedroom suite mix. All the suites have larger footprints, certainly than you'd see in modern condos that are being built today. And it's retained the character feature in that this main floor here has 10-foot ceilings. So you have this quite airy, lofty feel to it when you come in the house. All of the suites have separate utilities, so you're not sharing water, power between units. And they're all constructed appropriately as a 1982 building. I've reviewed the engineering drawings and everything was permitted. So there's nothing that's been sort of cobbled together, janky, that are quite typical of what you find in older homes of that area in Victoria, probably certainly in many other cities. Since we've owned it, we've fully renovated the property. It was sort of done basic finishes initially, and we've since done new cabinetry and flooring and window covering. We've replaced the windows, we've replaced the roof. All of the major capital investments have been done, because my thinking is, well, I don't want to have to get the call at 2 a.m. that something has gone wrong. So I'm very much about fix it right initially, and then you don't have the headaches later. It has off-street parking, so you can see in the back that there's 6 off-street parking spots, 1 for each unit. And there's street parking as well that is free. And we have on-site laundry. So none of the suites have in-suite laundry. That was something that came along a little later on, but we do have one laundry room that's shared coin laundry, and that seems to do the job very well. And then we also have a shed at the back for bicycle storage. So many of our tenants like to commute with bikes, and certainly the bike network in Victoria is probably some of the best in the world, and makes it very easy. So there's bike storage. So this just gives you a sense of what it might look like in some of the suites. This is the 1-bedroom that's across the front of the house. This is very typical. We have the same paint colors, the same scheme in every suite. It makes it easy to maintain that way. My wife is the designer, so she's the one that sort of picked all of the colors. So all of the points I mentioned there about the ground level suite being lifted up, you can kind of get a sense there from the house construction what that's about. This is the interior of the house, so just give you a kind of a sense of what the finishings are like. So this is the 1-bedroom suite in the upper left-hand corner. All of the suites, we use laminate or vinyl plank flooring as much as we can. Bedrooms and stairwells will use carpeting for noise, but not having carpeting seems to be a very appealing thing for people. All the suites have large windows that are very airy. This picture here, that's the widest one, is the loft bedroom that's in one of the 2-bedroom suites. You can see in the bottom left, there's the laundry room. So it's just a locked access room with the coin-op laundry. And the bathroom, we've done tile surrounds on all of the bathrooms, so they're all clean and nice. And our target is sort of clean, nice, and affordable. So we're not trying to do granite countertops, which increases the price considerably, but make it nice that it can give that home feeling, but not break the bank. So just give you an idea of location. This is the property up here. Fort Street is like a major east-west thoroughfare. It leads up to the Royal Jubilee Hospital, about 1.5 kilometers away, and UVic further north than that. So you're about a 10-minute bus ride to UVic, and literally a 10-minute walk from that location down to the very downtown, the library. I used to walk down there, and I could do that in 10 minutes. So very close. There's Government House here in the center of the graphic. Is a beautiful park setting right at the bottom of the street. All this Rockland area is a lot of these old character homes that have a really beautiful feel to them. And then, a little further down, you've got Gonzales Bay, where Liza is, and Ross Bay. So you can walk the waterfront there. So very ideal location for being walkable and also for not being right in the thick of things. It's sort of a nice balance that you're in this residential neighborhood street without being right in listening to buses and ambulances going along your front door. So the unique benefits of this property. This is the back of the house here. You can see the 2-bedroom suites to get in. These are split level 2 bedrooms at the back. So superior location. This is the number one thing our tenants tell us has been the big attraction for the house, just being able to get around everywhere very quickly. And also because it has this residential feel, being on we're on a cul-de-sac, so there's no traffic on the street. The house is fully renovated, so there's no large capital costs anticipated. I'm all about maintenance, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist that way. I enjoy doing it, so I would say it's meticulously maintained, and that's been recognized in our appraisal. We've had 0 vacancy in the last 18 years, meaning when I advertise it, I can rent it right away, and I've never had to unintentionally carry any suite. Sometimes I would take them for renovations for a month, but I was able to get them right back in. And sometimes people would move out temporarily, so I would do flooring or something for them. So I point that out because this comes up in appraisals, as you have these allowances for adjustments that they make of 2 or 3% vacancy rate, and really it doesn't apply to us.
Ash, just in the interest of time, I'm going to just interrupt because we've only got about 10 minutes left, and I have to take 5 minutes at the end. Can you go through, because I know if there's interest, we're going to do a deeper dive into this.
Yeah.
Can you go through some of the numbers fairly quickly for us, just so people can get an idea about that? Thanks. Okay. I know it's hard to stick to 5 minutes, right?
That's true. Yeah. Initially my slide deck was shorter. So I'll give you a quick overview here. So recently had the property appraised at 2.9. Gross income is 152, and our NOA is about 123,000. If you break that out, that's about $483,000 per unit as a per door cost. Keep that number in mind because I'll come back to that in the financials. And I'm able to do VTB or other types of financing options. I can be flexible. I won't jump into the city fund financials because it was an example just to create a number, and there's a lot of artificialities in it I don't think help. So I'm just going to skip that. Here's an option I wanted to present that makes sense as a possible option. I mean, we could vary things, but let's say we start with a cash down payment. Let's assume there's 6 people interested in doing this. So each person would take a suite, and collectively you put down $650,000 cash on a property purchase of $2.9 million. So there would be property transfer tax, there's legal costs, there's adjustments. So those are pretty much your closing costs. What Mike shows is he could do a CMHC loan for about $1.7 million. And then they take a commission for putting that all together along with CMHC. And then we would provide vendor take-back financing for the difference, whatever that needs to be, in order to bring the deal to a close. My vendor take-back, I would offer a sort of prime +1 on a 5-year term, and leave it open. Some of the other financial institutions seem to be rather predatory in how they structure deals, but I think I can create a much more of a win-win situation myself. So for CMHC financing, for $1.7 million, this is on a 3.85% interest on a 5-year deal for 40-year loan term, which is there's no way you can get that in any other sort of commercial financing. That would be your monthly cost, just under $7,000 a month. Now, if we take my actual numbers and break that out monthly, that's how much after paying taxes and property and insurance and all of the costs associated with the house from 2024, 2025, my latest costs, it's just over $10,000 a month income. Okay, and then so loan payment and then a variable VTB type loan to complement it, we can basically have for $108,000 a person, you can own the suite and it'll cash flow with in balance, which is pretty amazing, really. So your per door cost is much cheaper. So if you look, again, looking at kind of comparable concept of this model, you know, a similar kind of condo in that area might be 850 to 900,000, and you're getting it for almost half that. You have the suite ownership, so you own it for $108,000 down, and it carries itself, and that'll cover it for 5 years. And it's a simpler structure than with a strata, and having, you know, with strata is you have a large number of people to have to satisfy, and they're efficient in the way they manage maintenance, I'll say. So we can get more into that, but I really do think it's a win-win opportunity, something that's worth investigating more if people are interested in that kind of a model, you know, six unit building.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Maybe
Thank you
we'll
for
take
sharing
one.
that. I know there's going to be, you know, again, it's going to spark a lot of discussion, right? Because there are probably a few people who are seeing an opportunity like this for the first time. It's quite similar to what we did with Crescent. You know, we use the example of it's an ocean view condo and you're buying it for $450,000 a door, and we used CMHC and we got a 40-year amortization. So I know we're just about out of time. Is there anyone else who just wants to, like, I'm going to give you 1 minute to tell me about your property or your opportunity. And if you want to go longer than that, let's get you doing a presentation for the next month's Nomads, Nesters, and Neighbours. And then I'm going to very quickly tell you about what's next. 1 minute. Anybody need to share immediately? Alexis, go ahead.
Yeah, hey guys. Thanks so much, Liza, for putting this on. I absolutely love this webinar. And yeah, so my name is Alexis. I work mostly in the regenerative space. So it can be with co-living, co-housing, conscious and intentional communities. I have a couple coming up that I think some people on this call might be interested in. One is going to be an intentional community that has a fractional ownership model. So you can own your piece of the community and you pay an overall HOA, but you can come and go as you please. So if you're not there, then you can Airbnb it, rent it out, you know, as you see fit. We have here in BC that we're creating one right now. I can give you guys the details on that as well. Please DM me. I can send you our actual like pitch deck. And we had a webinar a couple weeks ago with the owner. And then another one, which is really exciting, is going to be a castle in Italy. You heard me. We're going to be doing a castle in Italy. And that's going to be with more artists and creators. Once again, you can be hosting your retreats there. You can be hosting if you wanted a wedding there and be making some good money while expanding your beautiful spaces out in Europe, and then visiting it whenever you want and have your community there. So it's exactly what Liza is talking about, you know, with having this global community. And I just love what and sharing all this knowledge with anyone. So if you're interested to know more about either of those dynamics, reach out to me. I would love to hear about your vision, about what it is that you're looking
Alexis.
for, and see how we can connect. Thanks, Liza.
I let you go over a minute. All right, so I'm going to try to wrap this up with some stuff just my end. So you're probably seeing my big picture on the screen. Your village, your way. So a couple of things. First of all, if you're in Vancouver, there's a happy hour today. It is at 4:30. It is at Tap and Barrel at Olympic Village. So we'll probably be there for a couple of hours. I'm going to be emceeing again at Pacific West Conference, which is the largest real estate conference in BC. It's happening October 21st and 22nd. Whether you're a realtor or in any kind of business, I mean, it is one of the best conferences I've ever been to, and I'm an event planner of trade. So there we go. Those of you who are new, please sign up newsletter so you can go to lizarogers.com. We've shifted the Ren site over to be housed under the Liza Rogers site, and we'll get into that, all of those reasons in another way. But I also want to just share with you, If you enjoyed a taste of what's coming up, what came up today, we're going to be diving much deeper into this in what I'm calling the book is a village that's coming out soon. The mastermind program that we're doing is called Your Village, Your Way. So I just want to run a couple things past you. So the people that were on the call today, plus coaches, plus the best people to bring you the CMHC options so you can tap into things like those 40 and 50-year amortizations. Our cash flow queen, Hong Lu, our Darlene, who has just taken her certification in AI mastery, Darcy Henneberry, who is a Joe Dispenza certified neuroscientist. So we're going to be diving deep, an hour each session, into a lot of these things that we've just kind of glossed over today. So we're looking at a huge value in coaching programs. I've spent about $100,000 over the last 5 years on my coaches, and that's fairly typical for people who are in this space. We've got about 50 years of combined experience. We're working with the best realtors, lawyers, the best accountants, and they will be on the calls. And as I say, we'll be diving in deeper. These are just some of the properties that I've done. We've got all the templates, all the tools, back offices. I'm a Mindvalley Certified Coach, and so the back office that they provide us in terms of, Noam and I were talking a lot about personality, right? Like the personality tests that we get people to do right up front, so you learn how to communicate with people better, and how to communicate with your opposites, and also attract your opposites into your deal, because you don't want a bunch of nomads running your property. Would be a disaster. You've got to have a combination of all of those people, and you need to bring everybody into the fold, but you really need to know how to communicate with them. So lots of community and collaboration. As you can see, we've got a great community here. The community is growing, and we have lots of other communities that we tap into. And so we are doing a very small kind of beta test from next week until the end of the year. There's probably going to be about 10 or 20 people in the group. Next year, we've already got indications that we're going to have about 200 people that are signing up. So if you want to take this for yourself or bring in a friend or family member, like I say, we're offering it right now. And I just want to tell you, we're going to be selling it for $39.95. If there's anybody in the group who wants to sign up, who was at the webinar today, we're going to offer 10 spaces for $4.95 US. It's a 12-week program. It's called Your Village, Your Way. And all of the things that we dove into today in a much deeper fashion with all of the tools that back it up. If anybody's interested, please let me know, because we just want to offer out for 24 hours, and then we're going to start doing that next week. And so that is pretty much all I have for right now. I'll stop sharing my screen. Does anybody have any questions? Oh my God, it's 11:29, like 1 minute. Anybody have any questions about anything before we wrap up for the day?
How often do you meet?
Hi, Judy.
Hi.
So this Nomads, Nesters, and Neighbours, we're going to be doing this monthly. So it's going to replace one of our other programs that we've been doing. So we're just going to decide on the date. Does this time work for people? I feel like this is a pretty good time, 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. Okay, so we're probably going to hold it. We may move it to the third Wednesday of the month, just because that works out better with some of the other things we have going. The coaching program is going to be every Wednesday at 8 a.m. So it's going to be 8 a.m. PST, and it's going to run 90 minutes. And it'll be very much an interactive piece. So you have a property, so say like Ash brought a property, we'll dissect the property together, and we'll be like, okay, if you're looking at this property, here's the lawyer you need to talk to. Here's Mike Abbey at City Fund, who's offering one thing with CMHC. Here's someone else that you might want to run that past, right? So we're going to teach you how to analyze these deals, how to get your friends and family interested, how to raise capital. And so those are the kind of things that we're going to be working in. Elisa's looking at partnering with property owners who want to transition. So yeah, there's lots of people who want to make that transition. So good question, Judy. Anybody have any questions? Okay, awesome. All right, so if anybody's interested, ping me right away, because we're just getting that done. Noam, I know you and I are going to connect more, because I'd love to have you as part of that program that we're delivering. And I know there's going to be some properties coming up. We may do a tour in Vancouver. We might do an Action for Traction Day, so we'll keep you posted on that. We're also looking at doing something in Victoria, which would be a visit to a modular home factory, a walk on the Malahat Skywalk, and probably lunch at a winery. So we like to bring people together in person. We think it's really important to do that. So we balance the Zoom with, and I didn't even tell you or talk to you about Mexico today, but we are legitimately looking at a 30-unit hotel for $4 million. So calculate the cost of that door and then tell me if you're not interested. All right, everybody, thank you so much. You know where to find us, Liza at LizaRogers.com. And I look forward to seeing more of all of you in the future. Thank you so much for being here today.
Mentor.